Section 2: Factors contributing to conflict escalation between conflicting nations. Understanding conflict escalation. Conflict between nations is a complex and multifaceted phenomenon, often characterized by a gradual escalation of tensions and hostilities. While the specific triggers and dynamics of each conflict may vary, there are several common factors that contribute to its escalation over time. By examining these factors, we can gain insight into the underlying dynamics of interstate conflict and explore strategies for conflict prevention and resolution. Historical grievances and territorial disputes. One of the primary drivers of conflict escalation between conflicting nations is historical grievances and territorial disputes. Many conflicts have their roots in unresolved disputes over land, resources, and historical injustices, which continue to fuel resentment and animosity between nations. Whether stemming from colonialism, imperialism, or past conflicts, these grievances can serve as a powerful catalyst for conflict escalation as each side seeks to assert its claims and defend its interests. Territorial disputes, in particular, are a common source of conflict escalation, as nations vie for control over strategic territories or maritime boundaries. From the South China Sea to the Kashmir region, these disputes often become flashpoints for tension and confrontation as competing claims clash and overlap. Moreover, the presence of valuable natural resources such as oil, gas, or minerals can further exacerbate these disputes as nations compete for access to these finite resources. Geopolitical rivalries and power dynamics. Another factor contributing to conflict escalation between conflicting nations is geopolitical rivalries and power dynamics. In an interconnected world where nations compete for influence and dominance, geopolitical considerations often play a central role in shaping interstate relations. Whether driven by ideological differences, strategic interests, or regional ambitions, these rivalries can lead to a dangerous escalation of tensions as nations jockey for a position on the global stage. Moreover, the presence of competing alliances and security arrangements can further complicate the dynamics of conflict escalation, as nations seek to shore up their alliances and deter potential adversaries. The emergence of new power centers, such as China and Russia, has added an additional layer of complexity to the geopolitical landscape, as established powers grapple with the rise of new challengers and seek to maintain their hegemony in key regions. Nationalism, identity politics, and public opinion. Nationalism, identity politics, and public opinion also play a significant role in driving conflict escalation between conflicting nations. In an era of rising nationalism and populism, politicians often exploit ethnic, religious, or cultural identities to rally public support and justify aggressive foreign policies. Moreover, the media and social media platforms can amplify nationalist sentiment and stoke public fears and anxieties, further fueling the escalation of conflict. Furthermore, the presence of nationalist movements and extremist groups can complicate efforts to de-escalate conflict, as these groups often reject compromise and advocate for confrontation and aggression. In some cases, nationalist fervor can lead to mass mobilization and popular support for military action, making it difficult for policymakers to pursue diplomatic solutions to conflict. Economic interests and resource competition. Economic interests and resource competition are also important factors contributing to conflict escalation between conflicting nations. In an increasingly interconnected global economy, Nations compete for access to markets, resources, and investment opportunities, often leading to economic rivalries and trade disputes. Moreover, the presence of valuable natural resources, such as oil, gas, or minerals, can further exacerbate tensions as nations vie for control over these finite resources. Furthermore, economic disparities and inequalities can create fertile ground for conflict escalation, as nations seek to assert their economic interests and protect their national sovereignty. From trade wars to economic sanctions, these disputes can escalate quickly, leading to further deterioration of relations between conflicting nations. Moreover, the economic impact of conflict escalation can be profound, leading to widespread hardship and suffering for ordinary people caught in the crossfire. Military buildup and arms races. Finally, military buildup and arms races are important factors contributing to conflict escalation between conflicting nations. In an era of heightened security concerns and strategic competition, nations often invest heavily in military capabilities to deter potential adversaries and project power in key regions. However, the presence of advanced weaponry and military technology can also increase the likelihood of conflict escalation, as nations seek to demonstrate their military prowess and assert their dominance. Moreover, the presence of military alliances and security commitments can further exacerbate the dynamics of conflict escalation, as nations are drawn into conflicts by their treaty obligations and alliance commitments. The proliferation of nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction adds an additional layer of complexity to the security landscape, increasing the risk of catastrophic escalation in the event of conflict. Section 1. Conclusion. Toward conflict prevention and resolution. In conclusion, conflict escalation between conflicting nations is driven by a complex interplay of factors, including historical grievances, geopolitical rivalries, nationalism, economic interests, and military buildup. By understanding these factors and their impact on interstate relations, policymakers and stakeholders can work to prevent conflict escalation and promote peaceful resolution of disputes. This requires a commitment to dialogue, diplomacy, and cooperation, as well as a recognition of the shared interest in common humanity that bind us together as nations and peoples. Ultimately, the path to peace lies in building bridges of understanding and cooperation rather than walls